everyone. Thank you so much for watching this year in review for my One-on-One with Jon Evans podcast. Hard to believe we've just wrapped up year 6. We were once again honored Best Podcast by the Radio Television Digital News Association of the Carolinas, the second time one of our episodes has won that award. And the interview that won is with former WECT News anchor Michelle Lee. Michelle is now working in St. Louis. And last New Year's Day, she did a story about traditional meals for the new year. Michelle shared that her family celebrates her Korean heritage with dumpling soup on January 1st. Well, a viewer called in and left a racist voicemail, which Michelle helped turn into a positive, launching the Very Asian movement.
She can keep her Korean to herself. All right, sorry, it was annoying.
You mentioned a while ago that you did talk to the woman who left the voicemail. What was that conversation like?
It was good. It was also a little confusing. So I had called and left a message that night that we did the commentary. And just said, no shame, I just want to talk to you and maybe have a conversation. So she called back, and I think the best way to describe it is it's complex. So she apologized. I believe she is sincere in her apology. And I think for me, I think the thing is, race is not going to get solved in one conversation. So we did promise that we would meet up one day when it's COVID safe. And I think that's a good start. Ultimately, I said, well, she's sorry. I accepted. And we can move on without her. We can say that I don't have any beef with her. And I feel very, very strongly that because of how everything worked out, I don't want her to lose her livelihood. I don't want her to lose her job. I don't want her to, have some sort of mental stress over it, because we have turned it into something positive. And she has to do some work, and I'm sure I have to do some work. So we'll just kind of move forward from there.
When I interviewed teenage actor Carson Holmes of Wrightsville Beach last January, the series he played on, Ozark, was #1 on Netflix. He's had the role of 3 Langmore for all 4 seasons of the show. Carson told me the experience of being on that show is life-changing. When you finally got on set, did you or anyone you were around have any kind of inkling that it would gain the popularity that it has?
Well, first off, we do have, stars like Jason Bateman and Laura Linney. So those 2 names in itself really help boost any kind of morale for that type of thing on set. But everybody else there was more or less, first time for something this big. But I was 13 years old when I first got the audition. I started doing auditions and classes at a place called Actors Arsenal, right down the street from my house, actually. And I remember it was this big monologue full of swear words, full of all sorts of stuff about money laundering. And it was quite a lot for a 13-year-old to try and memorize and learn. But it took me a solid week. And sure enough, a week later after I did it, I got a call and they were like, do you know how to wakeboard? That was the very first thing they asked me. They didn't even say I got the part. They were like, out of curiosity, do you know how to wakeboard? And I was like, no. So they were like, all right, well, we can figure that out later. Congratulations, you are in Ozark. It was amazing. It was life-changing, yeah.
Author and UNCW professor Nina de Gramont's novel, The Christie Affair, did not quite reach #1, but it did hit #5 on the New York Times bestseller list in February, fueled in part by being picked as Book of the Month by Academy Award winner Reese Witherspoon's book club. Where were you when you got the call that Reese's book club had selected The Christie Affair? Do you remember that day?
I was right here.
right in your
I think I
office?
was standing up. It was about 5 minutes before I was going to teach. And my editor, Jennifer, called and said, I have the most thrilling news. Reese Witherspoon is chosen in the Christie Affair for her February book pick. And I screamed and I jumped up and down. And Jennifer said, but you can't tell anybody. And I said, well, everybody I know just heard me scream. I don't know what I'm going to tell them. And it was amazing. And then I had to say, I've got to go teach. So it was definitely the most distracted class I've ever taught. But it was very thrilling and very exciting.
Still ahead in our special, my interview with an Emmy-award winning show host who spent time in town this year helping a local nonprofit. And we'll hear how close UNCW's new chancellor came to taking a different career course as our one-on-one podcast Year in Review continues. Legendary rock and roll band REO Speedwagon hit the stage of Live Oak Bank Pavilion in April, one of the concerts for the 2022 North Carolina Azalea Festival. Before their show here in Wilmington, I had the chance to interview REO's lead singer, Kevin Cronin, a highlight for me since I've been an REO fan for decades. The Azalea Festival show was one of the first live in-person events the band did coming off the COVID-19 pandemic. And as we continue our one-on-one podcast Year in Review, here's Kevin talking about getting back in front of fans after that long layoff.
We spent, like I say, almost 2 years off the road. So since we've been back, we've just noticed that people are, they're just starving for live music. There's just nothing like a live concert. You can't reproduce it anyway. So we're psyched, man. We're ready to go.
Do you still get as energized now on stage as you did back in the early 70s when you guys were really starting to try to make a name for yourselves?
Yeah, it's something that when you first start out, you're working toward getting to the point where it starts out, you have one song that people recognize, and every night you just look forward to playing that one song. For us it was Riding the Storm Out, and little by little over the years, you get a couple more songs that people recognize, a couple more songs that get played on the radio until you've got a whole show that you can play that people can pretty much sing along to every song in the set. Well, that's every songwriter's, every artist's dream. And so I don't take that for granted for 1 second, John. I mean, I still feel when I'm standing in the wings and the house lights go down and the walk-on music starts, I get that rush of adrenaline. I get, little butterflies. I'm as psyched to do it now as I ever have been, and in some ways even more so because of having it taken away for that time during COVID.
Another singer I interviewed this year, Morgan Myles, became Wilmington's connection to the NBC show The Voice. Morgan has played here several times, which is one of the reasons she picked Wilmington as North Carolina's city in her Miles Across America competition, where she promised to do a free concert in the place that threw the best watch parties for her time on the show. Now, after 16 years as a touring musician and performer, Morgan got her chance on The Voice and immediately made an impression. All 4 judges turned during her blind audition. That's a great start. Fans voted her all the way to the final 3. Morgan told me it was the career validation she badly needed.
After last year, 117 shows, solo acoustic on the road, I was exhausted, and some things went down with my booking agent who had committed fraud. And this is why I ended up taking the chance on The Voice of because I was questioning. I was like, how am I going through this yet again? And so when I got that validation, it was okay, this is the encouragement. This is the sign that you keep praying for. And this is pretty major. So quit, woo-hooing and wipe those tears, put your bootstraps on. You come way too far and you've tried way too long, and you do have a talent, Morgan, and I believe that's why God gave me this gift. I really believe that, and my intentions are truly from a good place, and I hope people see that. And yeah, I needed it. I think I really needed quite a big validation moment of encouragement, because I was struggling, for sure. I was.
Did you get close to maybe thinking about this may not be for me?
Oh yeah. I don't think I'd be human if I said it, no.
Another familiar face that visited Wilmington this year, Carson Kressley, the former co-host of the popular TV show Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. He came to town to MC a fundraiser for Welcome Home Angel, an effort that he supported for years. During our podcast interview, I asked Carson about the significance of the original Queer Eye show when it aired back in the mid-2000s. When you were doing the show, did you all have an idea of how important it was going to be for the LGBTQ community, or were you just five guys having fun and living life with this new opportunity?
Yeah, we had no idea that it would be, so impactful. Honestly, I just wanted to get rid of mullets and pleated khakis. And we were just, out there doing our jobs, being authentic, I think is really important. And we were having a great time. And the wonderful byproduct of that is that families would watch together, and young people would say, oh, I feel comfortable coming out to my family because we watched the show together and we had a dialogue about the coming out process or whatever. It just made young people's lives a little bit easier, because maybe for the first time they saw someone like them being represented on the screen. And I'm so lucky I had that opportunity with Drag Race. Right now, I'm so lucky I had that opportunity with Queer Eye 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And it's just, they've both been such huge blessings for me.
After the break, hear about the phone call that helped a Seahawk soar into a groundbreaking career when our Year in Review returns. And welcome back to our one-on-one podcast Year in Review special. UNCW got a new chancellor in 2022. Aswani Volety became the 7th chancellor at the university on July 1st, coming back to the place where he'd worked for 5 years previously. In researching for our interview, I found out Dr. Volety originally planned to pursue a career in medicine. Here's what he said about it. You came about this close to being a physician doctor instead of an education doctor. So if not for a couple of points, yes, we may be talking to you about a cure for a disease rather than leading UNCW.
It is. My mom's sister was a doctor. She lived in the United States for nearly 60 years. So growing up, she was a role model to me, because I grew up in a low income. I was a first generation student to go to college from my immediate family. Mm-hmm. So for me, growing up, she was a role model, and I wanted to be like her, be a doctor.
Sure.
In India, you go into medical school after high school, up to your 12th grade. It's a longer medical school. Mm-hmm. But I was 3 years younger to be able to take the medical entrance exam, so I went to pursue my undergraduate degree.
Okay.
So the first time I was able to take the medical entrance exam was the same time like my finals of my bachelor's.
Oh no.
And obviously I took both the exams, but I missed the medical entrance by 1 point. Wow. By that time I was already in graduate school, and so at that point the calculus was, do I really want to go back to right after high school and go into med school, or do I pursue higher ed, go into graduate school? Always wanted to go to the United States for higher education. Mm-hmm. Knowing the higher ed space and collaborating with faculty and staff across the globe, I'm even more convinced that the education in the U.S. is by far the best in the world.
UNCW alum Martin Jarmond has had a career of firsts in athletic administration. The former Seahawk basketball player became the first person of color to be named athletic director at both Boston College and at UCLA, where he is also the youngest AD for any Power 5 conference school. Martin told me his career may have gone a different way had it not been for a phone conversation he had with his mom. What changed your career path, Martin? Was there one single conversation, one single talk with someone, a singular instance that all of a sudden you said, all right, I'm going this way?
You know, I'll give you a story from my grad school, the first year in grad school at Ohio University. So, you know, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do. I like college. I like athletics, college, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And at the end of my first year at Ohio University, I was in a dual degree program, get your MBA, and then also get a master's in sports administration. And Ohio University is the oldest, most established sports administration grad program in the country. So go there, and at the end of the year, we always have this symposium where all the alumni come back. And this was the first time that a lot of us students were going to meet the alumni. And so for me, I was kind of thinking about being an athletic director, but I knew I wanted to be in college athletics at the time. So I was really looking forward to this. So we get to that night, it's 300 people, and I look around in the ballroom, and no one looks like me. And I took it hard. I went to the bathroom, got in a stall, locked it, and started crying. And I called my mom. And I called her and I said, Mama, I'm not going to become an athletic director because no one here looks like me. And she proceeded to ask me, are you by yourself? And I'm, you know, crying and yes, Mama, yeah, I'm by myself. And she says, get up, wash your face, and go back out there. And I'm like, what? And she says, she repeats it more sternly, get up, wash your face, and go back out there. And she told me, not only will you become an athletic director, but you're going to come back to this event and you're going to be the person that others that look like you see so they can see it too.
Wow.
And I got goosebumps. And that was probably a turning point for me because I think it's really important, and professionally, personally, it's hard to be something or do something if you haven't seen it before. It just really is. There's a comfort level, there's a belief of what, if you see someone that either has the same background, or looks like you, or speaks like you, or whatever it is, there's just a comfort level to that. And when you can't see it, it's much harder to attain. So her kind of setting me straight there, even though I couldn't see it, to have that belief in me and to help me find that belief in myself was game changer for me.
Coming up, a look at our most listened to podcast of 2022. Now we're going to close out this year in review with a clip from the most listened to one-on-one podcast episode of the year. It's my conversation with Bevin Prince. Fans of One Tree Hill remember Bevin. She played a character named Bevin on the hit TV show that shot in Wilmington for 9 seasons. She currently owns Recess by Bevin Prince, a high-intensity cycling center on Eastwood Road. Our interview was the first time Bevin spoke publicly about the tragic death of her husband, Will Friend. He died July 3rd after being struck by lightning on Masonboro Island. Bevin talked about gaining the strength to move forward after that tragic loss. I wake up every day and I know that my wife is there. I can't fathom what it would be like to wake up and have her taken in the way that Will was taken from you.
It's a living nightmare. It's an absolute living nightmare. It was like any other day that we've done a million times. The storm was far away, we're on the boat, everything's fine, and then in an instant, everything has changed. There's no normal, and there's no playbook for it, you know, and I know that everything, I hesitate to say this because I don't want to sound like I'm saying I'm fortunate in this situation, but I am fortunate in this situation to know that it was so much bigger than me. It was July 3rd, 3:13 p.m., and Will was 33. And it was instant. And the boat next to us had a keg on it. You know what I mean? Like the fact that he was struck, and right before he was struck, he looked at my father and he said, he lit a cigar and he said, Mike, well, if we get struck by lightning, this is a good place to be. This is where I want to be. And then it happened.
Wow.
Yeah. Instantly, the people that were on the boat next to us it was a nurse, an ex-military, and a bounty hunter.
Wow.
And they responded so fast. And then the police boat happened to be driving by right at that moment. Just happened to be there. So they were able to move him to the police boat. So there was, in my mind, there was absolutely nothing that could have been done. And I have to accept that this is larger than me and my understanding at this time.
When did it feel okay to start moving forward?
You know, it's still so day to day. Some days it doesn't feel okay. And I think the thing I remind myself is, I have two options. I can stay here on this planet, or I cannot. And that's not an option for me. So I really only have one option. And I knew when Will passed, I said, okay. I was fortunate enough to experience a kind of love and support and partnership that I know so many people will never feel. So my life now is service. My life now is service. That's it. And I'm going to do everything I can to serve the people in my community and the people that work with me and my friends and my family, and I will continue to show up and do that. That's all I know. That's all I can do. That's the only option.
Now, you can listen to all of this year's episodes of the One-on-One with Jon Evans podcast and those from previous seasons. Just go to the podcast page on our website, WECT.com, and our news app. There are links to listen inside all of the stories. And the episodes are also listed on all of the major podcast apps: Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Spotify, and many more. I'm Jon Evans. Thanks for watching this year in review for the One-on-One with Jon Evans podcast, and we'll see you for season 7 in 2023.